Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. Yesterday, Minister of the Crown made a $150 million announcement. That's no small amount of money. So what was the minister's response when she was asked where the money was coming from? She said, this is a direct quote, "I'm actually not quite sure where it's coming from." What? Can you believe that, Mr. Speaker? She actually said she had no idea where the funds were coming from. So, Mr. Speaker, can the Premier tell us where the money is coming from for that announcement?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, let me just make a shout out to the Minister of Community and Social Services and the Minister of Housing for the announcement yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, the idea of a basic income has been around for a very long time, and the Honourable Hugh Segal, who some members in the party opposite might know, has been talking about this and has worked with researchers, and to have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, as a government to put in place a pilot project on a basic income at a time when work is uncertain, Mr. Speaker, when we have a global economy that is uncertain. We know that finding the data, getting the information from this basic income pilot is extremely important, not just here in Ontario, Mr. Speaker, but internationally. There's a great deal of attention being paid to the outcomes of the basic income pilot, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, again to the Premier, and I didn't get an answer on the question of where the funds were going to come from. The Minister of the Crown had no idea. Mr. Speaker, the reality is, and this might be a news flash for this government, but money doesn't grow on trees. It actually has to come from somewhere. And the spin afterwards by the government saying it could come from the budget. The budget doesn't produce money. The budget doesn't pay taxes. The budget doesn't pay fees. Taxpayers pay fees. Taxpayers work hard. And to have a government right now that is completely disrespectful to taxpayer funds, making announcements with no idea how they're going to pay for them. Mr. Speaker, I'd like
Minister of Housing.
The government made an announcement yesterday. They had no idea where it's coming from. Can the Premier show this legislature the decency to tell us where that $150 million is going to come from?
Question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to Thursday, Mr. Speaker, when it will be laid out very clearly how our balanced budget builds on the platform, Mr. Speaker, that we have put in place over the last number of years. We have been working very hard, Mr. Speaker, to get to the point where we could invest in the people of this province, which we have been doing all along. But to balance the budget, Mr. Speaker, actually gives us the opportunity to take the next step, to further invest in the people of this province and do the things that we know are necessary in order to build the inclusive economy that we know is necessary for this province and for the people who are struggling with uncertainty, Mr. Speaker. Now, I'm not surprised that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't support the basic income pilot. I'm not surprised at all, because this is a party that has a history of cutting public services, Mr. Speaker, of actually undermining the foundation of the social safety network and the services that have been delivered in this province. But this is a good thing, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Without comment. Start the clock. Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, again to the Premier, if the Liberals were sincere about their announcement, they would have had some idea of how they're going to pay for it. The reality is, after 14 years, Ontarians work harder, they pay more, and they get less in Liberal Ontario. The cost of everything is going up, so it worries me, Mr. Speaker, when they make announcements with no clue of how it's going to be paid for. But if there's one thing I know about this Liberal government, if there's one thing they're good at, it's raising taxes. So when they make an announcement with no clue how it's going to be paid for, the reality is it's new taxes. So, Mr. Speaker, can the Premier assure us they're not going to pay for this announcement through new taxes?
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I can assure the member opposite of is that we will be bringing in a balanced budget on Thursday, Mr. Speaker, a balanced budget that will allow us to make investments in the lives of people in this province. And a basic income pilot, Mr. Speaker, is part of that, making sure that we have the evidence to demonstrate whether such an initiative would actually be able to be rolled out across the province, Mr. Speaker, whether it would help with the precarious employment and the realities of displacement because of technology, Mr. Speaker, because of the changing nature of work, Mr. Speaker. This is a huge opportunity to get evidence that will help us to make good decisions going forward, not just us, but internationally, Mr. Speaker.